Hey there, welcome back to Common Knowledge MTG, the show where I take a look at common Magic the Gathering cards and tell you, are they any good in the Pauper format or not? Let's get started right away with Goblin General. 1 and double red for a 1/1 Goblin Warrior. When this creature attacks goblin creatures you control, get +1/+1 until end of turn. That's kind of interesting. You know, a Lord effect, but a Lord effect behind a condition, an attack trigger in this case. That's cool. I also just love when rare cards get downshifted and then downshifted again to common. The bummer here, which I always hate, is that there is no black. Well, I guess there is a black set symbol. The Portal Second Age didn't use gold for the rarity yet, but still, there's no paper common version of this card, which does bum me out a little bit. The problem here is that it's so easy to pick off. You know, I guess once it's in combat, this guy's a goblin too, so he's going to become a 2/2, and that's all right. Like that's pretty cool. But for 3 mana, oh, I don't know. That's a little pricey to potentially just lose this guy without haste. That's going to be tough too. There's another goblin. The name escapes me right now, but like that's the one you want that comes down, has haste. I think he gives all your other goblins haste and maybe +1/+0, something like that. And he's like a better finisher for this kind of stuff. Still, I want to respect the lordness of this card, even though it's a 3 mana 1/1, which can sometimes be a 3 mana 2/2. Yeah, I'm gonna give it. Let's go for like a 2.5. You know, I think that's a good score that shows useful but not the best. Scorn Villager is 1 and a green for a 1/1 human werewolf. It can tap for green, and at the beginning of your upkeep, if no spells are cast last turn, you transform this creature into Moonscarred Werewolf, which is a 2/2 werewolf with vigilance, and you can tap to add green. And at the beginning of each upkeep, if a player has cast 2 or more spells last turn, transform this creature. So this has the day-night cycle without having the keywords of day and night, which is nice because once it dies, you don't have to track that anymore like you would with the actual day-night mechanic. But it does make the card just way wordier, and that kind of sucks. 2 mana Dork is not amazing. You know, we have Land of War Elves and Findhorn Elves and Elvish Mystic, and we have plenty of mana dorks here that are cheaper or better. The possibility that this can flip over and then be a better mana dork is all right. You know, imagine a 2 mana 2/2 that can tap for 2. Okay, now we're talking, and it has vigilance too. That's nice. So it can attack and get the mana production there in the same turn. Problem is, it's relatively easy for an opponent to manipulate this, and for you to manipulate it as well, to be able to flip the creature, but they can also just flip the creature back and put you in a position where it's tougher to get the good side, the side that you want. I think you can just do better generally, and I wouldn't worry about getting the extra little value you can get out of this, because I think most of the time this is going to be a disappointing card that can sometimes be a little better than its rate, but most of the time will just be a decent amount worse than its rate. And you kind of got to judge it on that more than you can judge the highs. Let's go for a 2.1. Still a mana dork. That's still pretty useful. Thaumaton Torpedo is a single mana for an artifact. You can pay 6, tap, and sacrifice this artifact to destroy target non-land permanent. This ability costs 3 less to activate if you've attacked with a spacecraft this turn. This is from Edge of Eternities. I was in the pre-release for that. I've opened some packs of Edge of Eternities. I have never seen this card. Never, not once. Kinda wild. It's okay. You see these every once in a while where it's an artifact. I think actually there's another one in Edge of Eternities that is a cheap artifact to get on the table, and then you spend a ton of mana into it, and you can destroy basically anything. It's a way for, it's a way in limited. It's a way for any deck to have some kind of removal, even if they're not really the colors for it. But in Pauper, you could think of these cards as potential Tron cards. Like removal in Tron, there's not a whole lot of removal that Tron can do, but when you can basically overspend, like this is Tron mana right here. It's one to play, 6 to activate. That's 7 mana. That's what your Tron mana can do. So you could pay all of your Tron mana and get this effect and destroy something on the opponent's side. I don't even think there's a common spacecraft. Is there a common spacecraft? Maybe we can check real quick. Spacecraft. And we'll go to Pauper. Yeah, oh, sure. The kill ship, yeah, obviously. And then the Wormwall Sweeper is not very good. But the kill ship is one that does get played in Tron. So that's interesting. You know, you have the ability here to make that cheaper. You're already using a card that shows up in the Tron decks. This might be a little better than something like Universal Solvent. Yeah, which, you know, very similar thing. 1 mana artifact. This time you pay 7 and tap sack to destroy target permanent. That's target permanent. This is non-land permanent. So if you do want to take out some lands, maybe you use Solvent instead. But for the most part, I think Torpedo could be all right. I think you just have better options. There's another one that came out in Avatar, Zuko's Exile, which is 5 mana for an instant. That's pretty nice. But you exile artifact, creature, or enchantment. Now your opponent does make a clue token, which isn't great, but for 5 mana to exile something could be useful as well. Exiling target artifact, especially to get rid of those artifact bridges or something like that. I think this is okay. If Tron has enough removal options that I don't think you need this, but this is not the worst removal option. In fact, the Pinnacle Kill Ship that helps kind of work with this is one of your removal options in Tron as a 7 mana thing that comes down, and when it enters, you deal 10 damage to a creature or something. So that is kind of your removal thing. Do you really need another removal thing that is more enabled by the other removal thing that you put in? I don't know. I think that might just be putting too many things that are away from Tron's real game plan, which is just putting down big stuff and killing the opponent with it, or flickering lands and things like that. These cards will not help you do those things, and therefore, you know, is a little contradictory to what you want to do. Maybe it's a sideboard piece. Maybe you put 2 of these in the sideboard in Tron and see how it works, but I don't think you need to. I'm gonna go with a 3.1 and respect it just a little bit, but I don't think this is a card you really need to play. Circle of Protection White. I don't think we've done this Circle of Protection yet, so let's talk about it. Cop White is 1 and a white for an enchantment. You can pay 1, and the next time a white source of your choice would deal damage to you this turn, you prevent that damage. Generally, I would say, I think we gave like the Circle of Protections generally like a 5. If you want to just talk about the entire cycle of them. But if you're just talking about individual colors, I would give this one less, for the reason that white is generally going to go wide. So if you're using a Circle of Protection, you're going to use it on individual creatures or spells. White doesn't have a ton of direct damage spells. They have some, you know, that do 3 damage to attack to target attacking or blocking creature. So you do have some of those abilities, I suppose. But most of the time, you're going to have a bunch of little creatures, maybe tokens, maybe just little guys. You know, the biggest thing you have to worry about is, I don't know, like a Rafine's Informant that's been connived, something buffed by a Chocomog itself. You're not really dealing with a ton of giant creatures in white in the same way that you would if you're playing red. or even potentially black. Like those are better circular protections, or red as well. Red's a pretty good one, especially with those direct damage spells. This is a way of you preventing that damage. So I think red, green, and black are good circular protections. I think white is and I think blue is bad. Blue just does not have much in the way of direct damage or big creatures, and that leaves blue feeling really, really bad. White, I think I could give a 2.1 to. It's, yeah, if I think the others are around a 5, and green and red might even be a touch higher than a 5, this one getting like a 2.1, I think is really telling of how not very good this is. Daily Bugle Reporters, a Spider-Man card here, is 3 and a white for a 2/3 human citizen. When this creature enters, you choose one. Either you have Puff Piece, which is put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures, or Investigative Journalism, to return target creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. Kind of interesting, honestly. I don't love to give to give props to Spider-Man cards, but I think this is a decent suite of abilities here. Putting 1/1 counters on up to 2 target creatures, so that you're putting 4 power on the board for 4 mana. That's okay. You can even put one of your counters on this guy, so he could be a 4 mana 3/4 that also puts another counter on another one of your guys. I don't hate that. And the other ability is not too bad either. I mean, it's a 4 mana 2/3, which kind of sucks, but the Raise Dead style ability here, conditional Raise Dead, but you're in white, so kind of probably more of a white weenie, or a lot of cheaper creatures, at least ways of getting those creatures back to your hand. Not a way to get the eagles back that can plane cycle again. That's, I suppose, notable, but the eagles are the worst land cyclers of the Lord of the Rings cycle, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. It's okay. I just think there are probably better cards. White generally can just dump more cards rather than having to worry about reanimating cards that it already has. There's some cases where the reanimator stuff does work in white, in like the Leon and Squire that can bring back 1 mana artifacts. You can do some fun stuff with that. But I think reporters here, it's okay. It's okay. It probably would have been decently strong in limited, but in Pauper, I think it gets outclassed pretty much every day. Let's give it a 2.8. Tempest Hawk. Whew. This is going to be an interesting one. Tempest Hawk is 2 and a white for a 2/2 flying bird. And when this creature enters, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you may search your library for a card named Tempest Hawk, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle. And a deck can have any number of cards named Tempest Hawk. So you're kind of going for why have I forgotten the name? I just played somebody who was playing. It's the Caw in Caw Gates. It's the it's not Scavenger. No. What am I thinking? Why have I lost the name of this this very famous creature? Oh God. Anyway, you know the one I'm talking about. The 1/1 hawk that you can go find other copies of the hawk. So this one kind of does a similar thing. That one is a 1/1 flyer that is an ETB trigger. This is a combat damage trigger. This is not an amazing rate, a 3 mana 2/2 flyer. Not crazy, but the idea that you could just constantly be getting more Tempest Hawks, and this gives you card advantage. You just can put a Tempest Hawk down, you do some damage, you get another Tempest Hawk. Maybe if the second Tempest Hawk now does damage too, now you get 2 Tempest Hawks out of your library. You can put as many Tempest Hawks as you want into that library, so you could really stuff that thing. If you have ways of making white spells cheaper, some familiar stuff, maybe this starts to get a little better. Now you're playing 2 mana 2/2 flyers, okay, and you can just keep getting more and more of them. Okay, I see it, but generally you're getting a French vanilla creature, and this is a Glinthawk that costs 3 times as much as a Glinthawk. sounds pretty bad when you put it that way. And it doesn't have the bounce capabilities of Glinthawk that is often an advantage for you instead of a disadvantage. There's probably a deck out there that takes advantage of this and does it in a cool way. I just haven't seen it yet, and I haven't really even seen the pieces that could make this a good combination. If it was an Inner's Trigger, I think we probably would figure out a way to make it work. You could probably make some really crazy combos where you've gotten the mana cost down to just a single white mana, and then you hawk into hawk into hawk into hawk, and that could be fun. That could be fun. It would probably also be very annoying because you'd have to shuffle in between all of those, or it's anyway. Let's give it a. I'm going to give it a 2.4, and I think a lot of that is for potential rather than what I know that it can do right now. Quick Study is a classic Magic card, even though it hasn't been in Magic all that long. It is a Divination effect, which is just a 3-mana draw 2, but Divination is sorcery speed. And Power Creep comes and says, well, you know what, that could just be instant speed. And it sees no play. Like none. Basically 0 play in Standard or in Pauper at this point. Because in Standard, you just have better options. I think just stock up right now, even though that sorcery speed gets you a lot more card selection in that. So you just take stock up whenever you need to. In Pauper, you don't have access to stock up. That's an uncommon card. Maybe you could still play this, but there's plenty of other card draw spells that are just more efficient. Your Brainstorms, your Ponders, your Ops, your Lorien Revealeds. Like there's plenty of things that you use for card draw in Pauper, and Quick Study just really isn't one of them, even though it's a solid card. Like this is just a very normal Magic card that is nonetheless good. Just good. Just a good card. I'm going to give it a 3.5 because it is just a good Magic card. It's just not a great Magic card, and that's really the difference in Pauper these days. So, what did I say? 3.5? Something around that? Anyway, it's a good card. Dustmantle Operative is 1 and a black for a 2/2 human rogue. This creature can't be blocked by creatures with power 4 or greater. I don't think that's necessarily all that good. There are some decks that this could do pretty well against. This could do pretty well, I suppose, against like terror decks, mono blue terror decks. Most of the creatures that those decks play outside of the 1-mana guy that can flip into the 3/2 creature, 3/2 flyer. Goodness, I'm forgetting all my names today. So yeah, you can swing under all the serpents. That's good, but most decks just have a bunch of cheap creatures because we're at the common rarity. There's going to be a lot of cheaper creatures out there that have less power than 4, and then they can block this guy pretty easily. And I don't think it's all that great, even if you can swing in. So it's unblockable. It's an unblockable 2/2 sometimes. Maybe you load it up with equipment or auras or something, and now you can swing in and they can't block profitably at that point. Okay, but I still don't love it. And even still, all the small creatures will be able to block this unprofitably, but they will still be able to block it. So it's not like you're really getting through with unblockable damage all the time. You're just not going to die or trade in combat when you load it up. You could still die and trade in combat when you're facing 2/2s or 3/2s or things like that. It's I don't think this is a particularly good card. I'm going to give it a 2. Secrets of the Golden City is 1 in double blue for a sorcery. It has Ascend. If you control 10 or more permanents, you get the city's blessing for the rest of the game. So you draw 2 cards. If you have the city's blessing, you draw 3 cards instead. So hey, we just talked about divinations. This is a 3-mana draw 2, but if you have the city's blessing, which is pretty easy to do. There's lots of ways to make tokens, and your lands count as the permanents in the game as well. So you can pretty easily get 10 permanents on the board at one time, and then you have the city's blessing, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. I think you have to play something that has ascend when you do that, though. So you don't just have the city's blessing. It doesn't just show up on the board that you have the city's blessing now because you had 10 permanents at one point. You would have to play this card while you had 10 permanents on the board to get the city's blessing. But then you could lose a bunch of permanents and still play this much later and still have the city's blessing at that point to get the bonus. So a divination that costs double blue, bad. A divination that draws you an extra card, much better. Much better. I still think this is generally not all that great. You just have better card draw options, all the ones I just mentioned when we talked about quick study. I would even say quick study I would generally take over this, especially if you can play some kind of familiars pile or some kind of cost reducer pile where your quick study could cost 2 or even 1. Now you're talking instant speed card draw for cheap like that. That's better than this. But this is still interesting. When you are able to draw that third card off this, you just feel so good. And that's something. That's something. Let's give it a 2.8. Grisly Spectacle is our last official card of the day. It's 2 and double black for an instant. Destroy target non-artifact creature. Its controller mills cards equal to that creature's power. Kind of interesting. You could play this on some pretty playable Pauper cards. You know, you could take out an Annoyed Altasaur or a Boarding Party or a Cryptic Serpent or a Gurmag Angler, and you have ways of, milling a bunch of cards from the opponent and getting rid of a really big creature. Most of the time, though, you're going to go, wow, this kills a creature and a non-artifact creature, which is not nothing. I mean, there's plenty of artifacts in Pauper and some artifact creatures that are halfway relevant, and you won't be able to hit any of those with this. But you're paying 4 mana for a removal spell, and then occasionally it will mill a decent amount of cards from your opponent. Sometimes your opponent wants to be milled like that. Again, the mono blue terror deck, they don't mind having some of their cards milled. It just makes the terrors easier to cast on the next turn. So it's a halfway decent removal spell. But if you're gonna do that, I might just play go for the throat instead, because that's also destroy target non-artifact creature, but it costs 2, not 4. Doomblade, non-black creature, but if you want to destroy artifact creatures, that's an option for you. But Cast Down, Cast Down is just the one that gets played these days. 4 mana is really hard to justify. I get why you can't make it 3 mana, because Murder is out there, and Murder is just, I think it's hard to power creep Murder. That feels like one of those thresholds that Wizards doesn't want to cross. They're like, we know Murder's not a good card, but every time we make a Murder with conditions that is cheaper, the conditions have to be there. And so to make a strictly better Murder, I don't think they're really interested in making one of those. And that's why Grisly Spectacle is probably what it is. But it makes for not an amazing card. I will give it a 2.6. Let's do a bonus card. Petrifying Meddler is 4 and a blue for a 4/5 Eldrazi with Devoid, meaning it has no color, even though you paid a blue for it. When you cast this spell, tap up to 1 target creature and put a stun counter on it. It's fine. It's fine. And it's got reach. Sorry. That's also, I guess, important to know. hidden down here at the bottom of the card, but it does have reach. 5 mana 4/5 with reach. Not all that great. The casting to tap a creature and put a stun counter on it, not too bad. The thing is, if you'd really want that to be at instant speed, if you're if you're playing an effect like this, you want it to be at instant speed, because what you'd like to do is when the opponent tries to go to combat, you flash this in, you put the stun you tap the creature, you put the stun counter on it, they can't attack that turn. Then the next turn comes around for them and they can take the stun counter off and he still can't attack, and then the next turn he can finally untap. So you get a little bit more value out of it like that. When you can't do that, sorry. When you can't do that, you kind of just paid 5 mana for a not so great creature and stop them for, a combat. It's just a little too normal, which is weird for a Modern Horizons 3 card, because those cards, especially the Eldrazi, mostly messed up cards that broke the format and multiple formats. But this one, it's fine. Let's give it a 2.3, I think. I don't particularly love it. That is all for today. Thanks so much for joining me. We will catch you on episode, what would it be, 103? Yeah, episode 103. Till then, see ya.